All righty, we're live. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Allied Communications 10-Minute Talks. I'm Jason Moss, the Marketing Manager for Allied Communications, and as always, I'm here with John Rees and Brian Doyle.
How's it going, guys?
What's going on, guys? How are you today?
All righty. Good. So for today's topic, we're going to be talking about software as a service, in particular SaaS backup. And probably we're going to start with kind of the elephant in the room. We know that Microsoft had an outage the other day. So, John, you want to just touch a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure everybody already knows that earlier in the week, you might not have been able to sign into your Office account. I know I had the issue myself. I was home on my iPhone. I mean, of course, everyone on this side of the country, Eastern Standard Time, I mean, it was happening after 5. So I guess most people didn't really worry about it. But, people across the world definitely impacted their daily lives working in the cloud, grabbing files, sending emails back and forth. From what I know, that if you were already in, you didn't have any issues, continue to use the Office 365. But if you weren't, and hey, you maybe you were in a sales meeting, you were about to present something that's up in OneDrive, you weren't getting to it. But that brings us to our SaaS backup. So if you were using a SaaS backup solution similar to Datto, Veeam, any one of those providers, you would always be able to pop into those portals and grab what you need for files, in a pinch. That's just one important thing about SaaS backup. I mean, there's many things behind SaaS backup, of course, not just regarding an outage like this, but it saves your files, indefinitely, depending on what kind of contracts you want to sign up for. But in the Microsoft world, say you delete a file, I think, what is it, Brian? Maybe 90 days to grab that file back, or you notice that it's gone in Microsoft?
Yeah, give or take. It depends on how your archiving set up. But yeah, I think the standards are 90 days. It's a relatively short period.
Yeah. So after those 90 days, hey, if you didn't notice that an important file was gone and you don't have any sort of backup, that file is gone for good. But in the world of SaaS backup, that file is still there indefinitely. So you're always able to go back, 2 days, 90 days, 120 days, and grab that file wherever it's been. Different variations of that file as well. Say you made an edit to it and kind of, took a lot of the chunk out of that file that you didn't want to at that time, and you can go back, as long as you need to grab that file and restore it.
Yeah. So, when you really look at what the Microsoft situation was this week, it really goes back to the fact that because of security concerns and things like that, we're really expanding the way authentication is occurring, right? We're all familiar with multi-factor authentication. Microsoft has some modernized authentication. So the problem you're referring to, John, those that were already authenticated didn't have so much of an issue. But if your system had to authenticate, your phones had to go out and reconnect to, re-sign into the systems, things like that, then there were some problems gaining access. And this kind of goes to an overall disaster recovery and, play and how to make sure that you've got tactics that'll ensure business continuity when these types of outages happen, since we're now more and more becoming slaves to the cloud, right? These files are no longer local. These systems are no longer local. We're leveraging these cloud services. So, you touched upon it a little bit, John. Some of the backup mediums that you have to give you the ability to reach up and grab those files, things like Veeam or things like online, offline backup, where you're backing up instances, especially if you do still have hosted services. But there are other services too. I'm still a big fan, even for Office 365, where possible, putting a third-party spam filter in front of it. One, to reduce the bandwidth coming into our systems, but more importantly, because they usually have a separate portal that you can log into for webmail as well. So when there's an outage going to Microsoft, you can set that to mailbag that information. It will hold that information there. You can go into a web portal and your users can go into a web portal and interact with it and send emails. And then through journaling, once that stuff gets restored, you can turn off the mailbagging, or if you've got it set for auto restore, it'll auto restore at that stage. And now all the mail flows down, right? So now it goes back to your mailbox, both the stuff you sent and the stuff you received. So, that's a way you can keep yourself active during this process. Certainly from a file standpoint, a lot of file share gives you the ability to sync locally as well. So if you've got that capability, you're going to be able to do some of that work locally. But of course, things you need to take into consideration at that stage are if you're collaborating with a group. It's tough to synchronize those changes when you're working offline versus what's going on when there's version control up in the cloud. But the point is, as IT managers, CIOs, or in the world of MSSPs, VCIOs, you really got to look at the entire customer landscape, say, where's the critical, paths when there's outages, where's going to cost, where those outages going to cost the most money, and then make sure you've got the right backup mechanisms or continuity mechanisms based on that. So, always a lesson learned when these come in. Who would have thought stronger authentication could, cause some challenges too? But, obviously it's something we all need.
Absolutely. I know a lot of these cloud solutions are pushing out two-form authentication everywhere. It's just added security. We need it, especially with everything in the cloud and just, all your information is just out there ready to be grabbed. The two-form authentication is definitely the way to go.
The other thing you want to think about when an outage has happened, before you go into some of your business continuity solutions, is what's the restore back going to look like? So, I mentioned that the email restores are pretty straightforward if you're using something like mail bagging. But if you start doing some real extensive file changes in a offline server mode, right, Veeam up in the cloud that's syncing back or something like that, you got to understand a little bit about what the fail back process looks like. And it's really easy to fail over. It's not always as easy to fail back and bring that data back into production. So, one thing you got to assess internally when these outages happen is, hey, how long are we really going to be down? Is it worth going to fail over, or is it worth a disruption? How much is this going to cost my company? Yeah, if you're Google, you might be talking in the millions per hour, right? But if you're, a standard small to mid-sized business, it might just be a minor inconvenience and not worth the effort on the other side. So, part of your business continuity and disaster plan is determining, what systems are critical and how long of an outage can you withstand before you go to some of those systems. And maybe time of day plays into it, like you mentioned earlier, John.
Yep, exactly. Like, it didn't really affect me. I didn't have to worry about it, but a lot of people didn't. Even back to the file storage, right? What kind of backup are you doing for your files? And if you lose all of those files, what does that cost you? Like, get back to, your continuity plan, how it affects a small business to a medium business to a large enterprise. It's really about, making sure that what kind of tools are in place and what kind of tools would save you money in the long run, even if you're paying, a monthly cost for them.
Beautiful. Yeah. So, there's a lot of things to consider. One thing I will say, to many businesses is it's probably time to look at your business continuity plan and update it, because my guess is if you haven't done that in the last 3 or 4 years, if at all, things have changed in your plan as you've moved different things out to the cloud. If you joined Microsoft 365 in the last 3 years, your email continuity plan is probably bust. So these are the things you really got to look at and spend some time going through that process. They're living, breathing documents, unfortunately, and technology changes at such a rapid rate. You got to stay on it.
Yep. As you can see, even the big guys do, have issues from time to time.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we've covered as much as we could probably cover on this topic, unless you've got anything else, John.
No, that's it. We pretty much cover all the points. Really just look at your plan and see where you can lay those tools in to make sure that your business is, running smoothly.
And don't diminish backup and disaster recovery. Too many people don't want to pay the price for that and then pay for it tenfold at the end. Even if insurance gives you the money for lost data and loss of work time, the reality is there's statistics out there that say over 50% of businesses that lose their data are out of business within 2 years.
Wow. Good to know. All right. Thanks, Brian.
All right. Thanks, guys. And thank you to everybody listening. Happy Friday, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, guys.